How you doing, fam? This is Comedics, my second video. See, I like to talk about today. I'd like to get a little deeper into some of the subjects, that I kind of briefly mentioned earlier in my previous video. My main subject today I want to talk about is the difference between knowing a divine being exists and believing a divine being exists, right? And I do say it is quite possible to know there's a divine being, versus just believing or relying upon faith, And look, I'm not one of those people that say, oh, the divine spoke to me, or, God spoke through me and all that. No, that's cool and all, that's what you believe, I'm not trying to bash you on that, but I'm just saying that it doesn't hold a lot of credibility, especially amongst like skeptics, like me. I'm just skeptic by nature. I like to see proof. I like to see evidence. I like you to back up with your facts, logic even. And another thing is, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not religious, and I'm not atheist either. Not agnostic. I follow much older spiritual systems, but let me put it this way: I don't think there's a single one spiritual system that I could just say that's me, that's it. It's, to be honest, it's a combination of a lot of spiritual systems, and if you study your information, which I've seen many brothers and sisters do, you can combine a lot of the information. It's meant to be combined. In fact, if any spiritual system isn't designed to evolve and to grow, especially with new information that has been presented, especially like as our understanding of science and all that, then that's not a spiritual system, at least for me. And before I get too deep into this, I would like to make something clear. These are my opinions, okay? You don't have to believe what I believe. In fact, I encourage you to do your own research. I can't stand people who blindly follow anybody just because it sounded convincing or just because it sounded good, I think we all need to do our own research. A lot of us suffer from cognitive dissonance. Basically we have a core belief, and from that core belief stems a lot of our other beliefs, and it kind of dictates what kind of information we will accept into our reality, if that makes sense. But let me try to get into this, and I think I need to start with perceptions, perceptions on how we view life, and look, what we pass off as truth, right? Starting with the one, right? A lot of perceptions is what keeps us embedded in a lot of these religious ideologies, a lot of our moral standards, ethics, etc., etc. For instance, good and evil, right and wrong. These two concepts are only relevant within our human mind. And I'll explain. Because see, look, you look in nature, right? You have animals, you have plants, etc., etc. I don't have to explain what it's in nature, but just the same. Can you honestly say that they understand what right and wrong is? Good and bad? Good and evil? You think they understand these concepts? They really don't. They're living their life. In fact, it's an author, Ra'u Nefer Amen, author of the Medi Nether. I don't know if you're familiar, and I would definitely like to talk about him later in some other subjects. I have some questions, and I'm kind of curious to see if maybe some of my brothers and sisters are on the same wavelength I am regarding some of these teachers. But just the same, I want to say These concepts, do they exist in nature, you know? And to be honest with you, they don't. They only exist within our human perception. We create these concepts. We purposely create these concepts to create experiences, right? And I know that idea sounds crazy and all this, but he's like, no, well, such and such was a bad guy, you know, oh, such and such was so good and all that. But really, we've created these concepts, you know. Just like concepts of far and short, tall and small, you know, right and left, even time and space. I mean, think about it. If time is only relevant on a planet that has a rotation that's going around the sun with a tilt, right? If you weren't on a planet and you were just submerged in space, nothing around you, no, I mean, stars just everywhere, but no close sun, no planet, no none. And let's just humor ourselves and say that you could survive out there without oxygen and all this, and you could survive for thousands upon thousands of years, millions of years even. You know, is time even relevant? You know, or what if you're on a different planet, on a whole different solar system that has different rotation, different speeds? Well, time would be a lot different than it is here. Time is only relevant based upon our perspective of it. We create time. That'll be the same with space. If you are distance, same concept. You're in space and all that. Is distance even relevant? Is distance really the same for everybody else? I mean, we all perceive things a lot differently. In fact, you know, you don't need a doctoral degree in neuroscience and understand and notice. You know, they post their findings. You know, distance is very mind relevant. You know, we create these concepts, and same with time. You know, you heard such stories that when you're in a car crash, you know, what's the first thing that happens? Everything around you slows down. But to everyone else, time seems like it's going the same constant speed, right? So what happened? It's a mind thing. It's a mental thing. Right? So these perceptions we created, and our ancestors understood these well. You know, Cometians called it Shu and Tefnut. Chinese called it Yin and Yang. Different cultures call it different things. Basically, that's what it is, opposite polarities, you know, and these polarities are necessary, because for instance, how can you know what tall is if you don't know what small is? You know, how can you know what good times are if you don't know what bad times are? They become relevant when we're trying to create an experience, and to be honest with you, I think that's exactly what our purpose is here. So, getting off now a little perceptions, and you know, I want to look at, okay, let's look at it this way. We don't exactly, when we're talking about divine intelligence, it's not like we have a rubric that we can look at this checklist and be like, oh, okay, well, this, and this, and this, and this exists, so it means a divine intelligence must exist. In fact, most of the times we're relying upon religious ideologies or ancient texts, you know, and we're relying upon their ideas of what a divine intelligence is, or, you know, we're relying upon concepts like faith, you know, which is basically believing in nothing, you know, that no thing exists, but you believe it exists, you know. Don't get me wrong, that for some people they need that, you know, that's fine, you know. I'm trying to create a foundation where anybody who's not religious and all this but wants to know about if there's a divine intelligence can easily look and like, well, look, science says there is, you know, clearly there's a divine intelligence because this is what science is telling us, you know. And I don't think science is refuting the idea of God. In fact, it's the exact opposite if you ask me, you know. And I say divine intelligence versus, I think I need to make this clear, you know, you rarely hear me say God, you know, because that's a masculine terminology, and I usually try to lean more towards androgynous concepts, you know, because I believe the divine is both male and female, both polarities, you know. And I think it gets confusing. So if I say God, usually you'll hear me say Goddess followed right by it, or Creator and Creatress. You see what I'm saying? Or you might hear me say the Grand Spirit. You know, I like a lot of Native American concepts as well. But I come up with a list, okay? And you know, I want to hear your opinions. You know, if you feel like you have something else that you can add to this list, or if you felt like something I said on the list doesn't really make sense, or, you know, you add to it, go ahead and comment at me on that. You know, I'm very open-minded and I'm open to other people's opinions. But this list, I say, is what we need to look for when we're talking about divine intelligence. And I'm going to go through the list and I'm going to try to describe each one briefly. Right. The first one I say is cycles, self-explanatory, or patterns. Second one is laws. Third is abstract patterns that create larger patterns or illusions, you know, mainly fractals when I'm speaking on this. Interconnections and communication between matter and energy. I think that's very important. Ability for matter and energy to change from one state to another. Initial conditionings, broken symmetries, organizing principles, and last one, is incompleteness, right? And I'm gonna go into each one of these a little briefly. First one, patterns and cycles, self-explanatory. I believe there are cycles and patterns and everything in nature. And when I say nature, I'm not just referring to Earth. You know, nature exists everywhere in the cosmos. You know, I view nature as that force behind that force. You know, or force behind force. But I believe there's cycles everywhere you go. I mean, there's even cycles in our brain thoughts. You know, we go from alpha waves to beta waves, to theta waves, to gamma waves, to delta waves, and back. You know, we do this constantly. Most of them occur during sleep, which is the same. These are in cycles. Not nature, but seasons. Seasons also go in cycles and all that. Certain types of thoughts. You even heard fashion goes in cycles. You know, this is all, in my opinion, signs and divine intelligence. You know, we're literally mimicking, or everything is a micro version or much macro version of the cosmos. Or you heard concepts like as below, so above, as above, so below, as within, so without, as within. I believe that's exactly the proof we need, you know, looking for divine intelligence. Second is laws. Pretty self-explanatory. I mean, practically everything you studied in school, especially along the lines of physics and many other sciences, chemistry and all that, you know, definitely discuss all these laws. You know, those are, in my opinion, the physical laws. You know, there are also called spiritual laws or esoteric laws. The governing universe, and many of you are familiar with these. I'm pretty sure you have your own. I won't get too deep into that quite yet. Believe me, I want to get very deep into that. Next is abstract patterns that create larger patterns or illusions. You know, say fractals. Prime example of this is atoms. Atoms can be very abstract, especially dealing with different types of atoms. You know, don't get me wrong, I know probably you who study quantum physics very thoroughly and all this, you know, or studied anything that what's his face, I can't think of his name right now, but just the same, it's along the lines that every atom is just a duplicate of the hydrogen atom. You know, it's all the same atom. It's just the same. I believe these abstract patterns create larger patterns, which pretty self-explanatory. You know, it's reality you see. Next is the ability for matter to change from one state to another. I think this is very important as well. Prime example of water. Water can go from a liquid state to a solid state, which is ice, or that to a gaseous state, which is, you know, vapors, or however you want to look at it. Next is initial conditioning. Initial conditioning, again, we'd be dealing with atoms. Basically what we're looking at is conditions that create larger systems. That would be atoms. Enough atoms create molecules, enough molecules create cells, cells create larger structures, which we see, so on and so forth. Next is broken symmetries, and this can be best way to look at that. The best example I can think of, or best two examples I can think of, is you got I believe it's called the snow crab or the king crab. But you would think that, like most animals, they're asymmetrical. They look the same on both sides, right? Versus the king crab, he'll have one small claw and the other claw is huge and all that. They call this broken symmetries. Another example of that is a snowflake, for instance. All snowflakes are basically made up of water molecules, right? Those water molecules all exhibit the same look. They're very symmetrical. 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen atom, right? They're all the same until they're frozen, and they create their own intricate patterns of snowflakes and all that. And no 2 snowflakes are the same. You can turn it on the side, and it's not the same pattern. So that's broken symmetries. And the last one is not the last one. Next one is organizing principles. And organizing principles, pretty self-explanatory. Really, I look at the best example of this is nature. Or even species, so to speak. I think an organizing principle is electromagnetism. It's organizing those atoms to hold their shape and form, right? And last on the list, I don't know if I said it, but I believe is incompleteness. And I'm going off the work of Gödel. I don't know if y'all familiar. He's a brilliant mathematician. In fact, he proved that mathematics cannot explain everything. In fact, there are limitations to mathematics, and that basically it's incomplete. And that's a very, very disturbing thought for anyone who truly thinks about that, or anyone who's in the mathematician or who's studying mathematics. This Gödel is very talked about. He's very controversial amongst his own colleagues. But I believe that this list here is kind of like, you could say, my rubric or guideline into proving the existence and higher intelligence. You might have other methods to prove the existence and all that, and that's fine. Like I said, bring them to the table. We're here to build. Enough of this, oh, your opinion sucks and all that, blah 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 blah. But you can't state your own opinions, or you ain't trying to build. We're in a different age. If we want things to change and all that, especially trying to eradicate some of these religious institutions that are hindering us, we need to establish our own. We need to create our own stuff. So definitely I want some help. But I'm gonna try to wrap this up, but I want to kind of end it with this kind of thought. This logical thought. I'm still dealing with believing and knowing. All right, and it's just simple, dealing with logic, right? Just taking the idea that if there is a divine being, right? It's just taking the idea that time and space are relevant. That there is a so-called in the beginning, right? That means in the beginning, before creation, the divine would have to be alone. Not lonely, but alone, right? Because what? It's the omnipotence, the omnipresence. I'm not saying that right. The omnipotence, the omnipresence, and the omniscience. Basically, it knows all things, it be all things, and it is all places, all times, etc., etc. Right? If we believe in these concepts, we literally have to believe in these concepts. You see what I'm saying? There's no room for, oh no, it's not doesn't apply here. You know, no, that's a literal concept. That's a literal statement. Basically, the divine is all. That's a literal statement. Okay? Well, so before creation, it has experienced everything. Absolutely everything. So it knows all things and all that. The only thing it hasn't experienced is itself as itself. That's what we're here for. Right? This is only possible if you take away one key element. You have to create a conscious unit. Right? And in this conscious unit, you have to take away one prime key ingredient for all of this to take place, and that's the knowledge of self. And I believe that's exactly what we're here. And the logic behind this is, if there's a divine being, then everything in creation would have to be within the creator. So creation isn't really creation like we think it is, because when we say creation, it's usually creating something outside yourself. Creation is really negation. The creator is creating within itself. Right? So that means everything in creation would have to be an aspect of the creator. It would have to be a part of the creator. It would have to be the creator, for else how could it exist? Think about that. How could it possibly exist if it wasn't the creator? So the creator creates within itself and creates levels and layers and laws and everything you see basically in the universe and things we don't understand. You know, this is exactly what the creator is. You also have to understand the creator is all potentials and all possibilities. So every possible reality that can be conceived must be occurring. This is exactly what the creator is. This is why I say you can't define the creator, put the creator in the box. You know, the creator is not a noun, you know, it's not a person, place, or thing, you know, and it's not some blue-eyed, you know, I don't. Just the same, this is my logic behind that, you know, and like I said, I like to hear your opinions, I like to hear your comments, you know. You know, if you can add to it, or if you got something you feel that I didn't touch upon, you know, but it's the same. Like I said, I'm trying to get more organized. You know, I ain't gonna lie, got kind of excited, you know, about my first video. You know, I saw I got quite a few likes and views on YouTube and stuff. You know, so I kind of rushed this video. You know, I'll definitely go deeper into some of these subjects. You know, but yeah, stay tuned. It's your boy Comedics. You know, and like I said, guys, you know, leave me some comments. I want to hear your opinion. I want to hear your voice. You know, and I like what do you call it? Constructive criticism. You know, but like I said, Comedics, tuned out. Peace and blessings.